Everybody that seeks for attention is cool, and we don't like easy. We haven't seen sexy for ages at Gucci. It's mini skirts, it's short shorts, it's a little belt, it's a little loafer, it's a cute jacket, it's a little blouse. So no deep thoughts, just fashion. And how do you say Louis Vuitton?
Louis Vuitton.
Huh?
Louis Vuitton.
I'm getting old, huh? Hello, welcome back to my huge channel, everybody. You might be right thinking, where has this human being been? But to be very honest, I didn't upload videos for 5 months, just really quickly to give an update about myself. I had some, I would not call it issues, but some decisions to make in the last 5 months. And as you can see, I decided for you guys, so I will be continuing to do my videos even more frequently than I ever was before, because I'm such a dedicated and sweetheart person. If you ask yourself, what is the smoke here? I don't know if you can see it, but I just need some good vibes. This is I bought this in a really cute, oh my god, my Gisanda. This beautiful thing was about to burn my Gisanda pants. Obviously not important, like we don't care about brands and stuff, you know. I'm back to business, I would say, and I want to talk with you today about the Milan Fashion Week and why everybody is so mean about it. Like what's wrong with everybody? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with a lot of magazines that I cannot mention right now, and a lot of Instagram posts that kind of hate it, and a lot of reviews that I read, they also kind of hate it, except for the Vogue runway ones. What's wrong? What's wrong? We're going to talk about this today because I think it's important, since I will have the chance, and I feel myself like I'm super lucky to have had the chance to see some shows here in Paris since I live here. It was amazing. The thing is, it's really the circus everybody's talking about. Everybody's crazy. Everybody is crazy. It's a bit hard if you're a hardworking, honest person as I am, you know. So Milan Fashion Week is interesting because the first time ever, after years of following fashion, I realized there's a switch. There's a switch in Italy. What is going on in Italy? Let's talk about the most influential and richest ones, because who doesn't like to love about rich people? First of all, Gucci, then Bottega, then Prada. So the one thing we see during this fashion week in Milan, spring 2024, is that there are trends, and there are obvious trends. And you don't have to be a fashion knowledge person to be able to see it, because they're very obvious. I would say, let's just say 5, because it's always amazing to say there are 5 new trends. So I would say the very first one, and that is the most striking to me personally, is back to heritage. We see that at Prada, we see that at Gucci, and we see that, what was the third one? Bottega. So all 3 of these brands consider the topic of going back to heritage. The second big trend is back to craftsmanship, back to patterns, back to manufacturing, back to the seamstresses, showcasing what a house is actually capable of. The third big trend is back to minimalism. Literally, this considers the styles, but also shit, I should have closed the window. No, but the third trend is really minimalism. We see it in the cuts, we see it in the designs, we see it in the length of the skirts, and we see it in the number of details, like really patterns or embroideries or non-existing embroideries or whatever it is. So not so many details. If you have had a look at Bottega, you might be like, girl, what you talking? But I will talk about this later again. The fourth big trend, to me, it's more like an emotional thought that I also see in Paris way more, is back to humbleness. So the jet set, maximalist fashion that we were used to is way more quiet. This goes hand in hand with the minimalism, but it's also the pieces that were designed are way more humble. It's way more generic also, as you might say, because it is approachable for a way bigger community. Do they do that for the money? Do they do this for the sake of design? We will never know, but it looks way more humble. The fifth trend is the color selection. If we have a look at the colors we see here, you will see that the colors are mostly kind of muted They're being inspired from nature with a selection of the colors. So I don't say that we have a Le Mer collection here that is usually like dusty, earthy tones. We definitely have some striking colors, especially in the Bottega show, but they come from nature. They inspired from nature, even if it's the green, the yellow, the turquoise, it all comes from nature, and that is something also very interesting in this season. So the other question is here, what has happened to Milan Fashion Week? I mean, it's the home of so many design houses. Of course, Paris is just the number of design houses and brands is just bigger. But what happened to Milan? Why has nobody been speaking about Milan anymore? And why were we disappointed? It actually starts with the fact that New York is slowly dying, to my sadness, and London is being single-handedly kept alive by uber-talented fashion school alumni that we see at Fashions East, for example. Milan also slowly but steadily manifested themselves as the grandma of the fashion weeks. To me personally, watching a Hugo Boss or Max Mara show, not as exciting. Bottega, I know I might be alone with this opinion, and maybe there are some other ones here that are joining me, but Mathieu Blasi, I know what he was doing. He was trying to show the craftsmanship, the Italian heritage. Was it boring me? Yes, it was. So I was not super excited lately. The Gucci switch took some time. Alessandro Michele's last years weren't as exciting. There was a lot going on in Milan that was not exciting anymore, and there were really moments where I was like, can we skip Milan? Can we just get the 2 or 3 good shows and have them back in Paris, and that's it. So the main issue with Milan is they have too many big names to be hated, too few innovations to be loved, and they show Dolce. That's also not so really a winning point if you want to be a cool city for fashion. But if you think of the most recent shows of Fendi, Gucci, and yes, I count Bottega to this as well, because as much as we love Mathieu Blasi, I was expecting just a bit more because he's coming from Maison Margiela Artisanal, which is the same as Haute Couture, so I was expecting him to do insanely things, but now I can officially say there was probably some thoughts of him that I didn't understand in his design process that now just makes way more sense to me. And that he also depicts and structures in a different way that is more understandable for me, maybe also for the wider audience, because to be very honest, leather looking like jeans, not sure about that. I was not sure about that, and I'm still not sure about this. I know it was being perceived as a big innovation. So actually, long story short, but Milan turned mostly into a triangle of sadness that is just standing on its feet because of its big logos, thanks to some Gucci tracksuits and mainly Gucci tracksuits. So how come there was a sudden change in Milan? I tell you what the sudden change is. And it was not that sudden because it took years. Creative director changes. All houses have changed their creative directors within the last 2 years. As per usual, it takes 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons, apparently sometimes, for a creative director to really glow up, to be like a flower, to be like a little hummingbird, running around, showing what they're really capable of. And I think this is something we see really striking in Milan right now, and because I was following it, and they had different paths, they had different speeds of innovation, the creative directors, and right now we see that they're all, to me, at a pretty good level where we can see, okay, this is striking, this is different from Milan, and this is the reason why we should have an eye on it. Just to make it quick, Mathieu came to Bottega, Maximilian came to Ferragamo, Sabato came to Gucci, Raf was added to Prada. Gisanda is still being managed by the Mayers, but the heritage is German, as you might know. The Meyer is not, but that's a different point. I'm not going to talk about the Mayers right now, Gisanda, because I think that's also a very complex house right now that deserves a dedicated video and a review of the collection as well. I do think that you all want this and aim for me talking about Gisanda even more. So I want to start with Prada real quick. What did we see at Prada? It was very interesting. It was full of references, and for me, since finding references is one of my hobbies and why I do all this kind of stuff, it was amazing to watch. And I think, it was not bad. It was a decent collection that was serving a very generic audience that is interested in very distinct pieces that showcase that you're wearing Prada, but that also has some heritage included. So for me personally, it is a bit more respectful towards Miuccia Prada and what she created, because this was something I found clearly missing. It's not that I didn't like the previous pieces of the shows. I also bought a few ones that I think are very interesting, and I think that the Raf Simons fusion also implemented that I find them even more interesting. No, not even more, let's say interesting. But this show was really helpful for me to understand that it can work to build a fusion. I'm usually not a big fan when designers take too many, make usage of too many references, that we almost like kind of fall out of a referencing window and turn it into the exact same thing and just say like it's a reference. When we just reduce something that already existed by 90% and we have 10%, and then we say it's very modern this way because it's just a piece of the pattern and not the full pattern, so it doesn't look very 80s anymore. This is something I personally don't like so much, but I think that Raf Simons and Miuccia really managed to find here a good balance of implementing patterns. But especially what I love the most is that Miuccia, of course, said in an interview that she's fed up. There was no press release, like there was no show note, which usually is there to explain exactly the idea of the designer and what they think of, so it doesn't look as abstract to us, even though I usually think that whenever I read show notes it's getting even more abstract. No, it sounds very delusional. It's so abstract. It's like a Shakespeare poem that you don't understand anymore, and you're like, come on, you just showed me horse riding pants and some polo shirts. Like, are you really talking about Nietzsche and Kant here? I don't know. So usually these kind of notes can also be exhausting for the viewer and also limit you in your own imagination of seeing what is supposed to be seen. And as all cool artists say, the audience decides what it is. I am also that kind of person that supports it. So they didn't have something, and they said, we don't want to think about ideas anymore. We want to talk about clothes. We just want to talk about clothes, and this is only something we can manage if we don't talk about the ideas behind it. This is something I truly love. It can also just mean that they've been lazy. This could absolutely have been my idea when I'm about to present something, like, there is no presentation, you are the presentation, or something like this. But yeah, they didn't have it, and I think it was clearly cool because no deep thoughts, just fashion. And this is something the Italians have changed this year. They're going away from branding and they're coming back to actual fashion and clothes. We also see that at Bottega, that I will talk about later. This means we don't have an innovation here. It's something like a transformation. So I think this thing of transformation is definitely the more obvious one within the selection, but we don't have an innovation here, and this is something the collection was clearly lacking of, especially when it comes to shoes. And we all know how crazy the Prada shoes can be and how beautiful they can be. I do think that it lacks here a bit, but I also see that Prada is trying to implement, and I think this comes clearly from Raf Simons, a iconic look for Prada, because that's something you need to create for a brand to be successful. But the fact that they care about their heritage shows to me again that they're not only trying to brand themselves but create clothes, fashion, and this is amazing. Coming to Gucci as the next brand. I think this is the brand that received the most criticism among the Italian brands from what I've read and heard. I get it. I do think we can have a different perspective on this as well, to have a bit more understanding towards the designer. So as you might know, we also have here the new creative director Sabato, who's been working for 14 years for Valentino, next to Pierpaolo Piccioli, that a lot of you guys also like. I do think still that Pierpaolo has, compared to the Parisian creative directors, a different perspective on fashion. I do think it's slightly more, I don't want to say conservative, but the idea of beauty for Pierpaolo is, to me, a bit more classic than I see at a house like Givenchy or Balenciaga or whatever. So I do think overall the Italian brands kind of still are a bit stuck in this classic stereotypical way of speaking about beauty. So the first time I looked at the collection, the first thing I thought of were three things, and that is loafers, bags, and Gigi logos. The bags were not super surprising to me because I already knew the Jackie bag, as you also might know. I saw the old Gigi logo come back as well as in belt form. I didn't know we were bringing back logo belts, but okay. And the loafers, which were like in platform, but it's still like the classical horse fit that we were used to. In defense of Alessandro Michele, I have to say, I know we are all super minimalist now. We are all super sleek and sophisticated people, and nobody wants to have anything to do with Alessandro Michele's designs anymore. It's too fairy tale. It's not beautiful. It's not elevated. It's not even in a big cool disruptive way. It's not cool because it's still too kitsch and old school. So this is how people perceive it now. But come on guys, if we think of 2018 or something, the guy doubled the revenue of Gucci, and that is all because we were all consuming Gucci stuff. Gucci runways were actually back then the Balenciaga runways, which were super exciting. He was very disruptive and he was very daring and fighting a lot, I'm sure, at Gucci. As much as he was loved, I'm sure it was not easy to realize these kind of ideas that he had. He managed to create an iconic Gucci look that never existed before, that was breaking very strongly with the Tom Ford Gucci, that was mainly based on sexiness and glam and glitter and body focusedness. And he gave all of us who do not like to wear too daring clothes, who want to be a bit more reserved, who are a bit more shy, he gave us all a suit, and even though it was tattooed monogram, it looked fucking cool. And this is something we need to acknowledge as well, and I do not like to see too often stuff like Alessandro Michele, oh my god, all these bees and stuff. Yes, but it was cool like 8 years ago, so everybody needs to chill here a bit when it comes to speaking about him, because you need to see it in context. And back then, a lot of people liked it. Of course, the row was great, but don't compare the row now to Gucci. Like, we shouldn't do that. So there was an interesting quote that I saw in Business of Fashion that Robert Williams, who wrote a review about it, said, and I think it is in a perfect description of the Gucci girl or Gucci woman. He said, Gucci is a girl walking down the street, young and cool, but not alienating, elegant with an edge. So we see that Gucci is trying to reach out to the younger audience as strongly as possible, and that with the most basic outfits as possible, and not basic in a bad manner, but in a very reduced Gucci theme design manner. You know, like we see some iconic cuts and designs that we're used to see. Gucci is a super old brand. It's still far away. I mean, there are a lot of references to Tom Ford Gucci when we see the hot pants, when we see the belts. It's still glamorous, kind of, you know, we see the open chest. It's giving a lot of cleavage and in a sexy way. We haven't seen sexy for ages at Gucci in a classical manner. It was always a very edgy and disruptive way, which I personally liked. And now it's a very more obvious way. And to be very honest, if you look at brands that try to reach a younger audience, that isn't mainly TikTok relevant, because we know, you know, everybody, we, you, me including, everybody wants to go TikTok viral, because that's the only chance to flee out of the system that we are in. So the TikTok audience, and I'm not trying to be mean towards young people, I know that you are crazy in your minds and you're influential and we need to soak up everything that you say, but it is true that the time frame you give yourself to have an understanding for a collection is very minimal. So if a collection is not being understood within seconds, the audience doesn't like it. They don't want to have references they need to look up to. They don't want to have thoughts and themes something is based on. They don't want to have a storytelling. It needs to be cool in a very second. And that means you need to be as literal as possible. That means your dress needs to be the dress I see in the store. It needs to be literally the same. And the runway and ready to wear is actually the same. You remember when you used to be online shopping and it said like, this is a runway piece, this is special? This will completely get lost now if we continue like this. Like, everything is so literal, nobody wants to see anything artistic on the runway anymore. Everybody wants something very real on the runway. This can be seen also from a positive side, that we're like, okay, we created all these runway dreams, but you know what? Nobody could afford it. Like, literally 3 people in the world could afford it. And now we're creating way more pieces that a lot more people can actually achieve to own. That's amazing. Is it I don't know. I prefer to see something dreamy and see a destructed and restricted and smaller version that I wear, because that's just the depiction of that little dream on my body at the end. I want to see something that I can dream about. I don't want to see something one-to-one that I have seen before, because it's very current. So what we see is not a new zeitgeist. It's just the current momentum that we're in. It's mini skirts, it's short shorts, it's a little belt, it's a little loafer, it's a cute jacket, it's a little blouse. So that's what we see at Gucci. And that's also why a lot of people are disappointed, and I get it. But in defense of Sabato, who is the first time ever still a creative director, which is hard, it is tough. Being a creative director and working as a designer in a design team is something completely different. You have suddenly like 30, 40, 50 people below you that you need to structurize, organize, give ideas, you need to evaluate it. So it's a super tough job. And I do understand that after Alessandro Michele, you're absolutely not going to try to step into his footsteps, especially since COVID hits. And unfortunately, this is still a circumstance that we're in. After COVID, our ideology of fashion has changed. It's not a surprise that we are all into minimalism now, that we're all into a certain type of artistic view which is based on essentials and functional pieces. This kind of aesthetic has come from the fact that we all thought we were about to die 2 years ago, and we didn't know what was going to happen, and everything that was not essential was not as beautiful to our eyes anymore. I mean, we value our homes more, we value our friends more, and we value our clothing more. We are more sustainable, we are more economical, we care about where the stuff comes from, where it's manufactured. We just care a bit more. I hope it stays like this. But brands like Gucci needed to reinvent themselves just because of this. Another point that is supporting the idea that Sabato has actually a clue of what he's doing and is not going to stay like this. For me personally, I absolutely trust in his skills, especially since he has been educated in a very technical design school, which is not very typical. I mean, there are like two different kind of personas. There are the designers that are very technical thinking, more architectural, it's the maths people in their head, and they're the more dreamy ones that create sketches and let's say they never use a computer. For example, Mathieu Blasi said he didn't use a computer the last 6 months. Instead, Sabato is somebody that is working very technical and has a very technical approach to sketching and everything. So you see how the minds are so different. It's also being reflected in the collections. I mean, if we talk about Bottega later, you also see Bottega is definitely the less technical person, but the more dreamy person probably. So Sabato learned to not create mood boards and sketches and this, but to have a very technical feeling. So he's definitely a person that is more maybe about precision and functionality and usage than creative outspokenness. And I think we can just summarize, when we say that Alessandro Michele is the eccentric type, Sabato is the essential type. And in fact, when we look at the name that Sabato gave to the collection, which was Ancora, and probably Ancora, it means again, like encore or again, we see that there is something coming again. It's coming back again from Gucci. But it also, because it can mean so many things, I looked it up, it has a lot of synonyms. It can mean a lot of things. It can also mean like a new start, a refreshing start, but still like based on the fundament that is existing. The fact that he took Daria again as an inspiration for his jewelry, who actually stopped creating any content like as a model since 2013, since her Celine years. I do think that we need to give him 2 seasons more, and maybe the 4th season or the 3rd season is going to be a bit more striking, and he will be able to like conceptualize his ideas maybe in a more refined way than we see it right now, because yes, it is very essential, and is that essential is easy, and we don't like easy. How do you say Louis Vuitton?
Louis Vuitton.
Huh?
Louis Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
Louis Vuitton. Vuitton. I need to pronounce the U?
Oh shit.
That's pretty good. It's the best coffee I had. Tastes like Mathieu Blasi did it. So while sipping my coffee, I forgot what I was talking about, but I think we can now move to Bottega Veneta. My Italian ex-colleague told me that's how you pronounce it, so it's Bottega Veneta. To make it real quick, because I think you need to know some context again about the designer, and since you can all Google, I'm sure, I just want to read this out loud from BOF. So Blasi was born in Paris and graduated from Le Cambre in Brussels. After internships at Nicolas Ghesquière's Balenciaga, John Galliano, he began his fashion career as a menswear designer for Raf Simons, which is pretty cool. Before joining Maison Martin Margiela to design the trend-setting secretive house's artisanal line, which is Margiela Artisanal, you might know it, which is actually just a synonym for the haute couture of Margiela. And then in 2014, Blasi moved to Celine, where he was senior designer under Phoebe Philo, which is funny because, of course, everybody knows how much I adore Mrs. Philo. And also all the other designers that I truly love, like Peter Do also worked under Phoebe Philo. Daniel Lee Hughes also, despite the dispute around him, I don't know what actually happened, just know the rumors. So kind of everybody who's successful touched this woman. So he goes to Celine, and after that he joins Raf Simons again, but at Calvin Klein 205 West 39 New York City, that I personally loved, but as you might know was suddenly cancelled after 2 or 3 years, and apparently because of the Trump thing, and the brand Calvin Klein 205 West was like super much based on the themes, colors and topics of Americana. Anyway, that's what he did before, which means the guy is just like super talented, extremely talented. What can we do with such a talent? And the thing is, I think in a New York Times article from 2014 that he was already mentioned as like the designer nobody knows. He's so anonymous, which makes him even cooler, because nobody that seeks for attention is cool. So I'm not cool, but they are. So that's why we like them. So Mathieu Blasi is very talented. Obviously, he's been working in a lot of design houses. And the fact that he was doing the artisanal line at Maison Margiela shows us today what he learned at Margiela. I do think that this is the most striking brand for him, where he managed to experience extreme disruptiveness and thoughtfulness when it comes to fabric transformation, visible transformation of art pieces or fashion pieces. And that's what we see in his recent collection as well. Because I have to say, I'm very honest, I was not the biggest supporter probably in his first 3 seasons, because I was missing the strong brand identity. I mean, Daniel Lee is a branding guy. He implemented the green into the Bottega. He's trying to implement the Yves Klein blue in Burberry, which already existed in Burberry Heritage, but he's like usually, he likes it very striking and he likes it when it's in your face, and he managed that, and he's a great leather goods and shoes designer. He was doing that at Celine. So Mathieu Blasi already is trying to create something. So he's coming to this brand. He's not super young, he's 40 years old, which is still young for an amazing position, but I don't know, there are people like Olivier Rostand, Nicolas Ghesquière, who started like creative director positions at 22. It's insane. I don't know, other people do internships. I was doing internships that age. These people took over Balenciaga and whatever. He's 40 and he has some experience, but when he came to Bottega, he reduced the number of the design team. He wanted to work closer together with the craftsmen who are actually working with the leather and wanted to have their input as well. And a funny story is also when he decided to create this jeans look-alike leather pieces, or the shirt, etc., or the flaneur shirt, everybody was like, this will not work. He wanted to create an illusion. That's what was it about. And he's also somebody that loves to collect art. You might remember the chairs also from the Bottega runway, but he's also a person who has who puts a lot of importance into comfort and coziness. And I think that's pretty cool, because I do think when we compare it to Daniel Lee's Bottega that we were seeing a lot more striking colors and cuts and stuff, but I don't think coziness was a priority, especially also when it comes to the shoes. And if we look at the shoes he's designing and the handbags and also the ready to wear, we see that he's first of all much more focusing on ready to wear, which didn't exist before, because Daniel Lee was trying to brand the the brand and was not trying to turn it into fashion so much. So fashion is usually, as you might know, not the main revenue driver. It's usually the leather goods, always the handbags, the shoes. Way more easy for everybody. People who don't care about fashion are going to buy the shoes and handbags. It's the most functional goods, so they sell more, and proportionally the ready-to-wear pieces can be extremely expensive. It's not that people don't pay 3K for a Louis Vuitton bag, but they don't likely like to pay 3K for a zipper by Louis Vuitton because it's not obvious it's Louis Vuitton, maybe also. So he's also focusing way more on the fashion at Bottega, and is trying to implement also a look that is standing also for a very strong and still disrupted women. This collection was inspired by the whole world. He doesn't say clearly which ones, but it's like Southeast Asia, Africa, France, Sicily, the locations of inspiration that he got for this collection, which I think is beautiful. And then you can say, okay, Tuba, what's so Italian about it? Because you were speaking about your Italian heritage. Well, it is still manufactured and created by Italians, and he is still showcasing the talents of his Italian craftsmen. And I do think he's trying to put again talent up front. And this is something to sum it all up, because that the collection is beautiful, I think, is pretty clear, and we don't have to discuss how insane this collection really is by Mathieu. And he already said after the last season, the fall season, that this was the end of his Italian trilogy and it will have a new start. The works, the leather works, and Bottega is an old leather house, as you might know. Insane. I will not go into the details too much, because I think I want to do, if I do like dedicated design videos, it needs to be a bit more, it needs to be a dedicated video. But I do think that we still see in this Milan Fashion Week that Italianism, a bit more minimalism, but craftsmanship in Italy and focus on fashion are like one of the biggest drivers. So overall, I have to say, I don't get the hate so much. I do think it was very refreshing for Milan. Not everything was as disruptive as I would like to. I think right now it's the Rick Owens show, so I will have a look at it. But that's about it, and yeah. I hope you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe, because you will get spammed a bit more now. Like, you will get spammed way more with fashion content. Tell me what you thought about the Fashion Week in Milan. Is there a show you liked? I know it's still a bit more conservative, but tell me what you think about it. I really, really care. And if you like to also get into my Discord channel, because we share a lot of personal stuff that like our looks, and then we want to hear how you like it, because we're cute. We're cute baby angels that care about the opinion of others, as you're supposed to.